Hello, BookTube. It's another episode of Manatee Mondays with my old frenemy, Deb, where we go through my aches and pains, my stories, and my books, because we are the doddering, disreputable, may have recently soiled themselves grandparents of BookTube.
Oh, I feel so seen.
And I don't want to say ladies first, because then you'll say something snotty like, go ahead then. So I'll just say,
I know my
first.
place. I know my place, Steve.
Oh God, you're trying to get the feminists to turn on me again. It's the hardest thing in the world in these conversations, not to just offhandedly refer to you as pet, because they would burn me at the stake if I did that. They are completely conditioned not to hear affection in anything.
Yeah.
He's a man, and he called a woman be the end of the world. I'm going to try not to do that. But you go first with your aches and pains. I think I know what yours is going to be, but you can tell everybody else.
I think it is. So one of the reasons I haven't been doing a little thing with Steve lately is because
Manatee Monday, right?
The Manatee Mondays, yes. Our other little things we'll just put on the side. Is because I lost a tooth. I lost one of my front teeth. It just fell out when I was eating. It was a fake tooth to begin with. Like I'd fallen on the sidewalk years ago and knocked my two front teeth out. So they were replacement teeth to begin with, and then one fell out, and that I was just happy that we are wearing masks in public because I had no front tooth. So just a couple days ago, I went to the dentist, and they removed what remained of the tooth and put a bridge in. So that's my aches and pains.
So I can now say with authority what the rumor that I've been mongering about you for years, which is that you've had work done.
I have had work done.
How's it feel?
It feels weird. It feels different. It doesn't feel like my normal. Well, I mean, the two front teeth were fake, were capped or whatever.
Right. But you had time to get used to them.
But that was like a decade or more ago, so probably like close to 15 years ago. So I was well used to those, but then this also involves a third tooth because they had to create a bridge to hold this tooth in place. They had to, it involves these two teeth. And so that feels weird. It feels very different.
And you mentioned that there was residual pain from the whole thing, right? And maybe discoloration, swelling.
Yeah, I think it's still a little bloody up here because the gum has to heal. And this is I will go back in like a month or so, month and a half, and get the real. This is like a temporary thing, and I'll go back like in a month or so and get.
And did you mention that the dentistry experience now is all covered from one end to the other with COVID precautions?
Oh yeah, they're all masked up. Yeah.
Well, my own aches and pains can't compete with having a tooth missing. I just have an itch right back here. It just won't go away. At first I thought it was just, dry skin.
Right.
So I tried to fix it with my weekly bath. And then I thought maybe it was something alive. It's exactly the spot that you can't see. So
right.
I thought maybe it's something alive. Maybe it's, I don't know, God forbid, a tick. But it's not. It's not. It's not anything at all. It's just it's the human equivalent of a dog's hot spot. Does Lucky get hot spots?
What do you mean hot spots?
Just a part of their skin will start to irritate. Sometimes they'll lick it or chew on it such that it makes the little patch bald for a bit. Dog owners deal with hot spots all the time.
Are you talking about mange?
No,
You have mange?
no, no. I'm talking about just a. Oh. I'm talking about just a little spot that gets overactive, irritated, and then it goes away.
I've had dogs that have licked their feet to the point where they've lost the hair on their feet. So maybe that's it.
I can't get at it in any way. I'm trying not to scratch it at all until the itch goes away, but it's not the same thing as having half my face reconstructed. Good Lord.
Is there anything there's nothing you can put on it? Like no creams or ointments or?
I don't think so. I haven't tried anything. I'm just counting on it going away. It's been there for 2 days. I'm just counting on it going away. That's all.
Okay.
But anyway, let's move on to your stories. Got no shortage of things to pick from in the time since we have last talked.
I know, and I don't have a story. I've been trying to think of a story. Like, what do I want to talk about? Like, what has hit me out of the news? And I just don't have one.
What?
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Is it that you're not watching the news? Sometimes don't you go through periods where you just can't take it, where you just don't watch the news?
I think
or is it
maybe
that you're numb?
I might be numb. I've been half watching the news. So I'll turn the news on, but I'm not really following it. So I don't really know what's going on.
Oh,
he's had his hair cut, so he's very handsome.
It's a little dog palooza. All those years I made fun of you for having tiny little dogs, and now I have one of my own. Oh, that's the price I pay.
My next dog will have to be a big old dog to make up for it.
You weren't outraged by Donald Trump going on Sean Hannity and saying that Haitians have AIDS? Anything like that?
See, I think that falls under the numb part. I think it's
could
just
very
like,
well be. Could very well be. Especially the more you know about him. He's been saying that about Black people for 30 years.
Right. There's nothing new there. It's like it's just more of the same.
Well, I have a story, and it affects you more than it affects me.
Yes.
It could be your story, not mine, because it affects you more than it affects me, and it's about Facebook. These revelations from the Wall Street Journal about Facebook, absolutely seismic, amazing revelations about Facebook. The people that are doing it for the Wall Street Journal, I forget the name of the 2 lead investigators, but they are certainly going to win a Pulitzer for it. And they have detailed, plus there's a whistleblower who's extremely convincing, who's been giving testimony left, right, and center to the effect that none of this wide-eyed who could have thought it business. Facebook knew that it was peddling misinformation during the last 2 US presidential elections. It knew what people were doing with that information, and it didn't stop it because it was generating clicks. They knew all along. I guess it's not really a surprise. Anybody who knows about these giant tech companies knows that they know that. They know more about their usage than anybody else does. So if Jack Dorsey or Mark Zuckerberg gets in front of a congressional committee and says, well, Senator, I don't really have those figures at my fingertips, but I can have somebody look into it for you, they're just plain lying. They know more than anybody, especially somebody like Zuckerberg, who owns 51% of Facebook. He's not accountable to anybody. He runs the company. He's not just the president of the board. He owns the all the decisions stop with him and start with him. And he's well known to be not human. so he certainly has kept track of everything that his company's doing. He just lied about it. I've watched that whistleblower give her testimony, and I've watched all kinds of punditry reaction. And I deleted my Facebook account years and years ago, but you still have one, don't you?
I still have one, but I very rarely, I never post. I very rarely even go on Facebook. I mostly have it for the history of my life on. Right.
Which they own.
It's
in a convenient place for you to look at it, but they make it, the term of service that you click on means they own it all.
Right.
You're not allowed to use those photos without their permission. Now, you're not anybody, and neither am I, so they're not going to stop you. But if they wanted to, the case would hold up in court. You're not allowed, if you've ever posted a picture of Lucky or Comet or whoever on Facebook, you're not legally allowed to use that without Facebook's permission, because it's theirs when you put it on there. And also any words, anything like that you post on there, it's all theirs. It all belongs to them. And it reminded me of, all of this testimony reminded me of an online conversation that has been happening for years now. There's a kid, he's like 4 feet tall, he's got red hair and gigantic goggly eyes, and the sort of guild navigator face flap of somebody who juuls all the time, who vapes all the time. His name is Tristan Harris. He used to be an ethicist at Google. And he has been sounding the warning bell for 5 years now about exactly this subject, that these companies only care about keeping you on them as long as possible.
Right.
And that they've measured what will do that. And horrible, salacious misinformation and outright lies will do that. It will keep you on the site longer. They've also measured the fact that a news feed that exactly tailors to your view of reality, in other words, that creates your own personal reality, will keep you watching longer than one that conflicts with your view of reality, which is why we're all living in our own realities now. That's exactly why that happens. I don't know if you saw that there was an interview that somebody from, what's Brian Williams's network? Is that MSNBC?
I think maybe.
So. One of his reporters went out and talked to a woman and asked her, what do you think about the idea of Trump supporting MAGA states seceding from the Union and starting their own country, which no one's actually saying it, but that country would be named after Trump. This person asked her, what would you think about that? He was clearly planning to ask follow-up questions to say, well, extensive studies have been done. The states that would certainly agree to this cannot support themselves economically. They need the rest of the country. Right. They are debtor states to the rest of the country. Massachusetts pays in more than it takes out to the federal union. So do most of the non-Trump states. So this reporter clearly wanted to ask her follow-up questions about what the economic results would be of those states seceding from the union. And do you know what she told him? She said, we already have. She lives in a separate country. She is certainly going to be arrested for not paying her taxes, for not following the laws of the United States. How many of these people have been pulled over and said, well, that's your law, not mine? And that is the my story part here. I'm only taking the extra time because you didn't have one, that's all. But my story part here reflects on the fact that what this whistleblower is saying is that Facebook wants that to be true. For its own economic bottom line, they want you to be able to pull over an American in Alabama and have them say, I live in a different country. The only reason they can think that is because they surround themselves on Facebook with people who also think it.
Right. You only see what you already agree with.
It's confirmed my decision. I'm glad that I got off Facebook. Although I didn't get off Facebook for that reason. I had no idea how evil it was. I thought I sensed a bit of how evil it was in the fact that they make you sign away the rights to your own memories. But the reason I got off Facebook is because it doesn't have a word limit. Because the people that I was friends with on Facebook will go on and on and on and on, and then check with you to see whether or not you read it. I don't want to read your disquisition on anything. I don't want to read 5,000 words from you on how great a movie Goodfellas is. On Twitter, there's a word limit. And if you signal that you're going to blather on and on, you have to signal it yourself. You have to say that it's a thread, one of 30, 20. And the minute I see that in parentheses, 1/ and then some number, I know to just drop the whole thing, don't read anything else from that person, because it's going to go on and on. But now I'm glad that I dropped Facebook.
Yeah, I think I'd definitely drop it if it weren't for the fact that I do enjoy seeing what I posted and what people posted to me years ago.
Do you connect with anybody through Facebook that you wouldn't otherwise have contact with?
Yes. Well, I found like old college friends through Facebook. So that's another reason I think it's a handy thing.
Mm.
I use Facebook Messenger.
Do you really?
Yeah, that's mostly what I use.
I see. I found myself
To
not
keep in
using
touch
any
with
of those
people.
features and not
Yeah.
caring about any of it. So I went down into the bowels of Facebook to unsubscribe, to cancel my account. It's really hard to do. The method of canceling your account that is on Facebook's site itself does not cancel your account. It just dims the lights on it. And I didn't want that. I wanted my account canceled with Facebook. So I had to go online. I had to go to YouTube and find out what the actual steps are for actually completely canceling your account. And I took those steps on the Facebook site. And you know what Facebook told me? We'll get back to you. Your request is pending. We'll let you know what we say. We'll let you know whether or not we give you permission to quit. If I didn't know this was pure evil before that, I certainly, and they eventually did give me permission to quit. But you know what? I know they're still doing it. I know my account is still there. I know that it is. What accountability do they have to anyone?
Well, it's got to be, I'm sure it's stored somewhere.
Yeah, but it's according to their own terms. When you do this official canceling of your account, according to their own terms, it is not. But I know that it is. There's no accountability. There's no oversight here. That's what's been the hue and cry on social media since this whistleblower, is that Facebook should be broken up, that it should be somehow accountable, instead of just one person, one weird, non-blinking, non-skin porous guy gets to determine what 3 billion people think and believe in the world. That has never happened before, and it ought not to be true.
Well, I really lost interest in Facebook during the election. I think it was the Clinton-Trump election, when it was like all politics, and I found out, how certain of my friends thought.
What we all learned in 2016. Like, we all learned who we know.
Yeah, most of the people I know basically agreed with me. But there were a few that were Trump supporters and said things that like I just was surprised by.
Yeah. I've often said that was the cruelest part of Trump's term in office, is that it made it impossible for us not to know the people we know, because they felt emboldened. They felt emboldened to say things they probably thought all along. And
and I just got disgusted of it being like meme after meme after meme, and I just thought, I don't really care anymore.
Maybe you should cancel your account.
Well, I probably won't, but
well, anyway, what about your books? It's been a while. The last time we talked for a Manatee Monday, you were working your way through the Dresden Files. But as I always tell people who are watching, you are the human version of me. So you could easily have had a reading slump between now and then, or 2 or 3.
I am in a slump, another reading slump. I got all excited about, what was I doing in September? Oh, Sci-Fi September. Didn't make it through one book. Even though the book I read was The Lies of Locke Lamora, and I loved it.
You did? Okay.
Didn't finish it.
You didn't finish it?
It's still sitting there waiting to be finished. Then I got all excited about October, horror reading, like eerie horror, gothic. And that's my favorite. Like, I love October for that reason. Like, I don't read horror during most of the year, but I like it during October. And I've done nothing so far. A little break there.
She's a good girl.
So I'm reading Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. She's the author of Mexican Gothic, and it's a vampire novel. And I read the first 125 pages in one night, in one evening, and I haven't picked it up since. So it's sitting there.
A library book.
It's a library book, yeah.
So is this your local branch of the Boston Public Library?
Well, I requested it through the local branch. I think it came from a different branch, but.
And I always ask this question whenever libraries come up, because I'm just curious. What's your local branch like? Can you go in and browse, or is it all pickup?
You can now go in and browse. It had been all pickup until I think this summer. So at some point this summer. Mm-hmm. Now you can go in and browse as long as you're masked. It's pretty empty.
Well, I have a lot more books than that for my own books. I just read this morning this thing by Sandro Galea, The Contagion Next Time. This comes out in November. That's going to be the cover.
Okay. And what is?
Well, it's about the U.S. disastrous response to COVID-19. But the author wants to broaden that, wants to say, we had a very good warning of some of the problems with that disastrous response when we had SARS 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. That was enough for us to see there would be huge discrepancies in care based on income. That was enough to show that there would be huge problems with getting out accurate information to people who have limited or very stilted information sources. That the author says that the SARS outbreak was a good indication of the importance of federal messaging, that if we'd paid more attention to that, we wouldn't have had quite so many problems with COVID-19. Mm-hmm. I thought all of that was cogently done, but the book infuriated me for just letting Donald Trump personally off the hook over and over and over again, just over and over and over again. Yes, all of those things were problems, but he made all of them much worse. And he did it, he alone bears responsibility for that. He personally made a lot of those things much, much worse. And yet at almost every turn in this book, the author will say that Donald Trump was mistaken about something, or ill-advised about something, when he wasn't mistaken, and he was perfectly advised. He was just lying. He was just lying. Frida, come on. There you go. But that's just one of the books. I've just done a couple more. I'm doing a slow read along of Dune. I went out and got the movie cover of Dune.
Oh, I hate movie covers, but
I wanted to see what it would feel like to go to our old Barnes and Noble and buy a copy of Dune. It was pretty interesting. It was pretty, that our old store was, I went in the middle of the day. It was a ghost town.
And you went in and you said, I'm looking for Dune, and they had no idea what you were talking about.
I don't even bother to ask. I know
they said, let me look it up in the computer.
Let me look it up in the computer, or, well, if it's about dunes, it'll probably be in Nature, something like that. I don't even go to the desk and ask anymore. I just went and found it on my own. Although one thing that was positive, just a little insider bookstore stuff here, is that the company, since the Barnes & Noble, the company, for those of you who are watching might not know this, changed ownership from the trio of Riggio brothers that owned it for the most of the time that Deb and I worked there, New York based, and also a board of investors, to one guy from the UK who bought it himself. So there's not the whole command structure changed. And one aspect of that change that I notice every time I go to that old store is that you no longer get the hardcore press for a membership card when you go to the register, which I got to tell you, I don't miss at all. I'm very happy that doesn't happen anymore.
Did they still ask?
No, they ask if you have one, but that's all. There's no, if you say no, that's the end of the discussion. Whereas when we worked there, that
you had to pound it.
You had to pound away at it. If the customer saying, no, I don't have a membership card, was the beginning of the conversation, not the end.
Right.
And managers watched. They paid close, vindictive attention to whether or not you were badgering the customers. I don't know how many times it happened to you, but I got talked to many, many times because I adamantly refused to do that. Yeah. I know a lot of the customers. I know when a no means no. I know when they don't want to be bothered.
Right.
I know when they're on their last good nerve. you badger me one more time, I'm going to buy books somewhere else.
Yeah, a customer would come up, like somebody with like 3 little kids that were, climbing all over them and getting into stuff, and their phone was ringing, and you were still supposed to make sure that you had that discussion. It's like, come on, you can't. That person is like, they can't, like, they can't process one more thing at that point.
And they shouldn't have to. A no should be a no. They shouldn't have to. I remember one time a customer came up to one of my registers, and she had 2 teenage girls with her daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the teenage girls she was yelling at, and the other was yelling at her. Their visit had gone wrong. There was lots and lots of really ice pick tension. And I asked her, do you have a membership card? She said no. I said, any interest in getting one? Do you shop with us a lot? If you do, it might save you some money. And she said, no, I don't even want to think about it at the moment. And I said, okay, just fine. And I naively thought, okay, well, you've covered your bases for what was obviously a fraught moment. You couldn't push that any further.
Right.
And assistant manager took me aside at the end of that hour. And you know what she said to me? Well, you got to know from the mother, but did you ask either of the teenage girls? So I'm sorry, you're arguing with your teenage daughter, but I assume she has a credit card of her own. Can she step aside for a minute and fill out an application form? Oh, that didn't happen though.
That was brutal. It was brutal.
Yeah, it was awful. And then the third book from my books that I want to show is something I really want to just show to you. I've already shown it on my BookTube channel, but I mainly just want to show it to you. It's the paperback of Tales from the Ant World by E.O. Wilson.
Oh, nice.
Blurb on the top by me. The Boston
gosh.
And
I remember when I saw the first blurb from you on a cover of a book.
This is the layout that they did in the Globe. Isn't that incredible? The ant is at the kitchen table and all the ants are coming in. It's the ant world. We just live in it. So I had this thing clipped out from the Globe and in my hardcover edition, but I'd much rather have one that has my name on the cover. So I put it in this one.
Very nice.
I just had to show it. That's all, because it's a blurb. This has been a great year for blurbs for Steve. It started off great. The Norton Critical Edition line did a Norton Critical Edition of The Tale of Genji. The very first time they've ever done it. They had a blurb by me.
Wow.
And then there was this thing has, my name above the author's name on the front cover. And then there's probably what's going to be the highlight of my blurbing life ever, which is the Norton Critical Edition brought out a new edition of their King James Bible. And I'm blurbed on the Bible. There'll be no living with me.
Oh God, that's just wrong.
I tend to agree, but the thought of all those school kids all over the country seeing that, because that'll be their school edition of the book. But anyway, those are my books. Lots and lots of others, but those are my books. Now I've got one more bookish question before we wrap up.
Yes.
Olive at a Book Olive is of course masterminding for November, nonfiction November.
Yes.
And you don't have a BookTube channel, but you're on my BookTube channel as often as I can get you on my BookTube channel. Are you going to read any nonfiction?
Well, now that I have a tooth, it might be more frequently.
I don't think they come to either of us for our looks.
No, but not having a front tooth does a lot for your self-esteem.
I remember. I remember that weekend still. It's been 20 years. I remember when I talked, I whistled.
I remember when I initially knocked them out, I went to work and it was Heather was the manager, and I'm standing there like I showed up for my shift and I'm crying because it had just happened, and she's like, "What are you doing here? Go home."
Yes.
But I was like the little trooper. No, I'm here for my shift, and she's like, "Get out of here, go home."
Because she was one of the good ones.
She was a good one. Yeah.
She was one of the good ones. They were all bad.
Heather was very, very good. I do plan to do some nonfiction November, and I'm hoping I'll actually do it and not. I don't know how to motivate myself to read. I think because I just feel very passive, so I just, watch videos and movies or whatever. But I have a few books. I have the biography of James Joyce and one of Nora Joyce. I think those might be interesting to read.
Who's Joyce biography? Richard Ellman?
Ellman, yeah. And I think that might be a nice pairing, Nora and James.
Well, we can only hope it's a better pairing in biography than it was in real life. You can't get any worse than that.
And I did set aside a few. What else did I set aside? I can't remember. There was a history book or two that I also put aside as like, yeah, I think I might read these.
Well, the push is on. Nonfiction November, just set them aside. So you've got the rest of October to dither in. And then nonfiction November is upon you. So anything in parting that you want to say to all of my BookTube viewers who like you more than they like me?
Just, I'm happy to be back. I've missed talking to Steve and, third party talking to you guys. And I'm hoping that we'll actually do more Manatee Mondays.
Yes, we'll try again next week.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up then.
All right.
But we'll be talking again.
All right.
Bye, BookTube.
Bye, BookTube.